All right, Arnold, can you tell me a little about what rituals mean to you?
Well, I don't know if I would call it rituals. I know you guys always try to invent new words to be snappy, which I understand, and this is maybe for the kind of the young people, but I mean, I call it just basically routines. I have a routine which basically means they do something where you don't have to think much, if at all. Like, I believe that routines are very important. It's kind of like the foundation, like to a house or to a building or to anything. So that means like if I get up in the morning, part of my routine is to get up in the morning at, let's say, 5 o'clock. Then I make my coffee. I feed the animals. I go and read the paper, go through my iPad, see if there are any important messages. So that's part of the routine. I don't even think about that. I also, part of the routine is that I have my bike already mounted on the back of my car. I drive down and then take it off, and I ride with the bike to the gym in the morning around 6 o'clock or so. Then I go to the gym and I work out 45 minutes to an hour, so that's also routine. It's always kind of the same thing, to do arms and deltoids one day, and the next day the chest and back, and calves and all the stuff I do every day, and form a little bit, and abs, of course, every day. And then it repeats itself. And I do this the whole week. And then what is also routine is that at night I do some extra cardiovascular work before I have dinner. So I go for, in my home gym here, I go upstairs and go for half an hour and do the arm cycle, or the treadmill, or the life cycle, or something like that is cardiovascular. And the idea is to burn enough calories so that when I eat dinner then, which is very minimal, that it is, I don't have to really worry about calories or gaining weight, because the older you get, the faster you gain weight and the more the body picks up because your metabolism is slow. So you have to be very careful with that. So those are kind of routine things that I do. And you try to add as many of those routine things as possible, because you do them without ever thinking about it. And that's what we need to do. There are certain things that we need to do that is supposed to be a routine, that's supposed to be kind of part of your daily schedule without you having to think about it. And so that's basically my kind of routine, and I'm a big believer in that.
Right. So I think a lot of people probably have trouble forming that habit that makes it automatic. I believe most people know what they should do, but actually doing it is difficult. How have you made so many good habits automatic for yourself?
Well, first of all, let me just go to your basic statement where you said that for some people that's very difficult. I mean, people should just realize that I'm not going to have any sympathy for any of those things, when someone says it's difficult, because there is a lot of things in life that are difficult. And you have to ask yourself the question right off the top, are you going to be one of those guys that are going to go and back off every time something is difficult? Or do you want to be one of those guys that says, look, it doesn't matter if it's easy or difficult or most difficult, I'm going to go and crush through it. That's me. That's the person that I want to be, and I'm going to prove it to myself, and I'm going to prove it to the rest of the world. So yeah, there are certain things that are difficult. It's difficult for people to have a routine, but they just have to go and do that, and they should just work on it, where they go and say, do something very simple. I'm going to go and get up every morning at, let's say, an hour early, before they normally get up, and just work on that. And then the next time they work on it and say, okay, I'm going to get up early, and I'm going to go and make my coffee or my tea or whatever, and I'm going to read papers, even though maybe I haven't read the paper yet in the last 10 years. Just add that to you, and don't even ask about it, should or should I not. That's the key thing about the routine, is that you don't ask yourself, should I or shouldn't I? You just do it. It's like we don't ask ourselves, should I inhale now or should I exhale now? We don't ask ourselves, do we take a shower every day? If you're a normal person, Okay, there's sometimes circumstances where, like when I was in the army, where we couldn't take a shower every day, but so you don't have to think about it. But I think it's something that normally we do every day. That you go home after, if you have that luxury, or after you work out, you take a shower. Or that after you use equipment in a gymnasium, you wash your hands. So before you have breakfast. So there's certain things that we do. And I think you just add slowly to that kind of a routine, because it is extremely important that we do things automatically, simply because we know that the brain is very tricky. It pulls tricks on you. That's why people become addicts. That's why they cannot do anything about, like if they're into eating a lot, it's very hard for them to get on a diet or to get off eating junk food, because the mind pulls a trick. You have a New Year's resolution, or a goal where you say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. And then when you see something sweet, you say, well, one day doesn't matter. I mean, no one is looking around, so I'm going to just have this little banana cream pie. And this is how it tricks you, because the mind, because you're an addict now to sweets, the mind pulls the trick that it says to you, it sends a signal that says, it's okay. Just one more time. What do you care? And so this is why it has to be automatic. So you have to get into the stage where you just say automatically, when they bring bread to the table, thank you very much, no bread. When they come and it says, any dessert, no thank you. Then right away, you shut it down. So there's certain things we do automatic, and it will really help you to achieve your goals. That's the bottom line there.
Yeah. Was that discipline something that you feel was just built in, or were you able to observe it from some people? Were you able to learn some of these habits, or really that what is difficult doesn't matter, just doing it is?
Well, with me, it was a little easier. And the reason is because I learned that very quickly early on when I was very young. So I was like 4 or 5 years old, and my father already, made us get up early in the morning, and he made us earn our breakfast.
What did that look like?
So that was it's one of those crazy things that only someone that was in the military or that is a police officer, he was that kind of a guy. He was always a police officer, and he was in the Second World War. And so he was trained like that, obviously. And so he wanted to go and do this same training with his children, with my brother and with me. And so he always said, you have to get up early, you have to wash yourself with ice cold water. I have no idea why it had to be cold, but I think there was no one that warmed up the water, and we had no running water at home in the first place. So it was just, ice cold water. So we had to wash ourselves, that wakes you up. Then you had to do a certain amount of push-ups and knee bends and sit-ups and stuff, some exercises he designed that we had to do before we earned our breakfast. So getting up early was indoctrinated into me. It was like part of my life always, that, was always the idea, the early birds catch the worm type of thing. So get up early and you can accomplish much more. And so because I started early, it was not something that threw me off, because I thought it was quite normal. And then later on, when I was like 19 years old, I remember I was already heavy into bodybuilding. I just won I came second in the Mr. Universe contest, the runner-up in London. And I was invited down to South Africa by Reg Park, by my idol, who was now this, Hercules figure that they saw on a big screen. And the guy that won 3 times Mr. Universe, he was gigantic, and he was like, I modeled my training after his and my career after his. So finally here I am living now. I'm staying with my idol at his house. He had this wonderful family, wife Marianne, and his 2 children. And at 4:45 he knocks on my door. And he says, Arnold, let's get up. And I said, what do you mean get up? And he says, well, let's get up, let's go to the gym. It's better now than ever. And so he said, I have breakfast ready. After breakfast cereal, so he had some cornflakes with some protein powder on top of it, which was probably 60% sugar because it tasted pretty good. And so we ate that for breakfast with some milk on it. And then we went to the gym. And by 5:30, we were doing full-fledged squats with 500 pounds. So, and it was like bench press and dumbbell presses and all this heavy stuff. And he was doing donkey races and on a machine calf races with 1,000 pounds and stuff like that. And it was like the most brutal wake-up call that I've ever had. I mean, my body was shaking. I was not used to that at all. But over the period of 3 weeks staying in South Africa and staying with him, and then going to the various different towns in South Africa to do exhibitions and seminars about training and all that stuff, during that time it became normal. So by the time I went back to Munich, where I was training and where I was a trainer, I was kind of bringing that idea to Munich, where we always started training at 9 o'clock in the morning, but now we started training at 7. Not at 5, but at 7.
Right.
So the guys around me, they couldn't believe it because the gym normally opened up at 10. No one trains in the morning. You know, this is like, we're talking about 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. So no one trained in the morning. People went to work in the morning. No one trained. Except students came in and military people that were stationed, the American military people that were stationed outside of Munich in the military base, they came in the morning at 10 o'clock or so. But we then decided, there was like a group of 4 or 5 guys, we decided we're going to train at 7. And we're only going to have maybe a piece of bread or something like that beforehand, or a banana. But then we trained, and then after that we had breakfast. So this became kind of the routine. And out of that came, you know, where people kind of like heard bodybuilders are training at 7 in the morning. They say, oh my God, I thought that you had no strength in the morning. Well, you know, of course you maybe don't have as much as in the evening, but you still can hit 95%. And it is more difficult to do squats in the morning and deadlift in the morning at that early. But you just know that when you then have a competition at 5 in the afternoon, that you're much stronger and you can lift much more. So that's perfectly okay. But the bottom line is that you can train any time of the day. We learned that very quickly. And so I kind of continued on with the tradition. I did 2 hours of working out in the morning and then 2 hours in the evening. And that routine was automatic. I didn't even think about it. My entire time in my bodybuilding career, I always trained twice a day, and never ever did I ask myself the question, should I go today and do the evening training? Or should I get up in the morning? I always got up at 5, 6 o'clock, always. And at 7 o'clock, I worked out.
I don't know what's more amazing, the double workouts, or the fact that you might have started the morning workout movement. It's crazy to think that gyms didn't even open before 50 years ago.
And now it is one of those great things that people now see the day much more as a 24-hour kind of a day.
Right.
Where they feel like, well, in this 24 hours, I can literally do anything and at any given time. Because the work schedule changed also for a lot of people. It's not anymore just from 9 to 5, but people now start working like, you know, I just literally like a few hours ago, I met my assistant at a framing shop. And I said to her, well, it's 9 o'clock. I said, isn't it fun to begin your work going to a framing shop and deciding how we're going to frame a painting and some photographs? And she said to me, she says, no, Arnold, I've been working since 6 o'clock in the morning. And I said, since 6 o'clock in the morning, congratulations. And so Barbara works from 6 o'clock on in the morning to whatever time in the afternoon. But so people now are looking at the day much differently than they did in the old days, you know, because now we have the lights, and you have technology, that you can do everything in the morning. And when we, for instance, do a movie, if you think about that, a movie like True Lies or a Terminator movie has at least 80 days of night shooting. So what are we doing when we night shoot? We sleep during the day. So now automatically everything is switched 12 hours. So you go for breakfast at 6 in the evening. When you arrive on a set, you have breakfast. And then now you go and you work. You do makeup and you work. At 12 o'clock or at 1 o'clock in the morning, they break for lunch. So in order for me to get my workout in, I now use this lunch period at 1 in the morning and I use in the train now for 1 hour. A lot of times I have the luxury that they say we don't need it right away after lunch because we have to set up the scene. So you have another half an hour or another hour. So I train maybe 2 hours. So 1 hour with the weights, then 1 hour preparing for the next big fight scene or stunt. So you can do that at 1 o'clock in the morning. We have worked out at 3 in the morning. We have worked out when they said, "Oh, Arnold, we don't need you anymore. You don't need to work to 6 in the morning. You can leave now." And I look at the watch and it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I say to myself, I get my workout in now because I'm still awake.
And you'll still do this now if you're shooting in the middle of the night, 4 a.m. workouts.
Exactly the same thing. So it makes no difference. Like when we did Terminator 6 in Budapest, every morning we get up at 5:30. At 6 o'clock we were already at the gym. So at 7 o'clock we left the gym and went to the set so we could be on the set at 7:30 to do makeup for an hour and a half. And then at 9 o'clock we were ready to shoot. So that was just the routine. So time doesn't mean anything. And we found out that the body is as receptive at 3 in the morning as it is at 3 in the afternoon, or as it is at 9 in the morning or at 5:30 in the morning. It makes no difference. You just have to get over these barriers where you say, "Oh, I can never do this in the morning," or something like this. Well, just do it. And this is where the advantage comes in, is if you do it automatically, where you say, "This is my goal, and I'm going to challenge myself and do that." I'm doing this automatically. And like I said, there's an advantage because you can get much more done in life if you do certain things automatically. It's no different than when you, for instance, run a state. Like when I was governor, the interesting thing was there was fixed funds. It was like $90 billion that the state spent automatically. And there was $50 billion that they spent automatically on education. That never changed. You don't have to sit there and think about it. That's what you spent. You can think about it if you have some additional revenues coming in unexpectedly. Then you can get creative and you can say, well, I'm going to give $3 billion more to education or something like that, or $1 billion more to after-school program, whatever it is. But there's certain things like for education, it is a fixed expenditure. For healthcare, it's a fixed expenditure. For prisons, it's a fixed expenditure. Okay? And then we have discretionary funds. Interestingly enough, maybe 8% of the total budget then is discretionary funds where you can make the decision as governor. So they give you very little wiggle room there. And that's the way it should be also with your daily routine. There's certain things that you should do. The amount of things that you want to build on that you do automatically should get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there are moments where we have to get very creative and where we really have to sit down and think and have brainstorming sessions and really get the brain cells, going, where you have to make major decisions. That's when you use your creativity. That's when you can sit down and be creative and think about those things. But the rest of it, you just do.
Right. So having so many things that are non-negotiable gives you obviously a lot more time to focus and be creative on fewer things where you need to be able to think outside the box or change things up. But what happens when, say, you have a setback in life and those normal things are thrown off, your typical schedule? Can you talk about a setback that you've had and then either how you use these habits or routines to come back and reestablish the normalcy?
Well, we all have setbacks. If you have personal setbacks, which I've had, or if you talk about health setbacks, which I've had, or professional setbacks, which I've had in the political world, in the show business world, and all this stuff. But I remember, for instance, one setback when I had the heart surgery. I go in 22 years ago. I had open heart surgery, and I got 2 new valves, the aortic valve and the pulmonary valve. And they told me that within the next 15 years, we have to change them out again because they were human valves. And so they lasted actually 22 years. So last year, after 22 years, I went in there and got the procedure to switch out the pulmonary valve. They said the new method is that we're going right through your arteries and the growings and through your arm, and it's a non-invasive surgery. So you don't have to worry anymore about open heart surgery and this is going to take 2 hours, and by 3 hours, you're totally awake again. Right. So, Arnold, we're going to give you now the anesthesia and, sleep well while we do our work. So I go to sleep. Next thing I know is I wake up and they said, well, it's now, you've been asleep 16 hours. And I said, why 16 hours? And there was 3 doctors in front of me. And they said, because we had to do open heart surgery. Something went wrong with this non-invasive procedure, and we punctured through your heart wall, and you had internal bleeding. And in order to not have you die on the operating table, we had to open you up. So now I'm lying there and I get this news that I just had the second open heart surgery. Well, the first thing that came to my mind was that, wait a minute, in 3.5 months I'm supposed to be in Budapest and I'm supposed to shoot Terminator 6. I mean, they always say it takes 6 months to recuperate and to recover.
I like how you're immediately thinking about the next working thing.
Well,
you just find out that you had open heart surgery and you're like, I got a huge assignment coming up in 3 months.
Exactly. Well, and that is, again, something that happens automatic to me because I always look for motivation. Because if you have no motivation, then it's very hard to get going under those kind of circumstances.
Right.
Because you're drugged up and you're down, you're in pain, and you have just faced, as you just said earlier, a major, major setback. And but I looked at that schedule and I said to myself, okay, when can I get up? And the doctor said, well, not for the next 3-4 days. We would not recommend it. This is because, this was very severe. And remember, you're not anymore the youngest guy in town and blah, 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 and all this. And so I said, well, he says, the only reason why I want you to get up as quickly as possible is because of your lungs. Because people don't die in our clinic here because of the heart procedure. They die because of pneumonia, because of the lack of activities, and the lung then fills with fluid and blah, blah, blah. So when I heard that, I said, okay, I'm going to be out of here tomorrow. I'm going to be up tomorrow and I'm going to start walking. So they said, no, that will be a little early. I said, no, just get me a walker. I hold on to it because they were worried about me fainting and falling over or something like this. So I walked with the walker around that station, on that floor where I was, where the intensive care was. And I had friends come in from my office and friends and family members that went on those walks with me. But throughout the day, I would then go to lie down again for 2 hours, and I would get up again, and I would go back with all the cables and all the medical equipment hooked up to me. I would go on those walks as a fanatic. And they would go longer and longer and longer until I did 2-hour walks where I went to various different areas in the hospital and all this stuff. And then without the walker, just with the cane, and then without the cane, and all of those kind of things. So it was within 6 days I was out of the hospital. And from then on, I just worked on this and worked on it, walked around here at the house, walked up the hills and everything. And the bottom line was I went back to the gym literally 3 weeks later and started working out with light weights and no chest exercise, of course, and all this. 3.5 months later, I was on a set. And I remember the first day was night shooting. The first week was night shooting. And we were jumping out of the van and we were doing the shootouts and fight scenes and stuff like that. And everything worked perfect. And the director said, I can't believe that you had heart surgery 3.5 months ago. So it's like we have setbacks. But if you have a very clear vision and a very clear goal, you can come back from those setbacks very quickly. The key thing is not to fall into this trap about feeling sorry for yourself. Because there's enough people out there in the world that are suffering much more than I was in that hospital bed when I woke up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People that didn't have the 3 doctors in front of them.
Right.
People that were lying in the dirt. People that were infected and didn't have medical care and they were dying. I mean, there's all these kind of cases that we hear about, the kind of things that people go through and that are dying. So I felt like there's no reason for me to feel sorry for myself. There was only one thing, and that was for me to kick in and to say, this is just one of many obstacles. That's what happens in life, and you just got to go and kick yourself in the butt and get going. And so you set a goal, have a very, very clear goal, and go for that. So when you talk about the setback, setting a goal and visualizing that goal and going after that is what it's all about.
Now, is the goal to be ready for filming, or is the goal something smaller? Because, I don't need to tell you this, but you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you're sitting there and they're telling you can't even use a walker. Which you were just talking about squatting 500 pounds at 5 a.m. And here you are, you're getting delivered this news, and obviously there's the big vision, but what helped you get from that? Because obviously being told you can't even walk is probably not easy for you to hear. You're still extremely active. How do you build up to something that for you just seems almost maybe something you would have taken for granted before then.
Well, first of all, think about this for a second. Whenever the medical profession talks about you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z, or under normal circumstances, people get up after 3 days, or whatever like that, then I immediately, my brain kicks in and says, this invisible kind of person talking to me saying, but Arnold, you were not born to be one of the ordinary folks out there. You never were an ordinary person. From the time you were a kid, you were not ordinary. You were driven, you were motivated, you had a goal, you became the youngest Mr. Universe, you came to Hollywood where everyone told you can never be an actor with an accent, and you became the highest paid entertainer, and all of those kind of things. When they told you would never be governor, you became governor. So you're not an ordinary person, so don't listen to this shit ordinary. Prove to them that there are some extraordinary things that can happen. And so that's exactly what I did. When I got up the next morning after the heart surgery, I said to myself, well, I'm not ordinary. I'm going to prove it to them, no matter how many times I fall all over the place in this room, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to start walking. Because the doctor said if I don't walk right away, the lungs are going to fill up with fluid. So that's the last thing I want, because most people, when they get older, wipe out in the hospital because of pneumonia, of fluid in the lungs. And that's what keeps them in there, and they die in there. So I didn't want to be one of them. So no matter what, I had to prove to myself that I'm not ordinary, that I'm extraordinary, and that I can do it. And so that's what got me out of that. So you just, instead of feeling sorry for yourself and trying to feel like you're one of many people, and the doctor said you know, that's what normally happens. There is no normal. Always think of yourself as special, and always think of yourself as like, okay, I'm going to prove to myself and to the rest of the world that I can do it. And then you just go out and get motivated. I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, and how much of that has been almost the DNA of what you've been able to do? Not necessarily that you were born to be different or extraordinary, but that you actually believe it.
Well, I believe it because I always believed it because I had a very clear goal. So if you have no goal, I mean, imagine that you go, I have friends that are pilots. I always tell them, I said, what would it be like if you go on a plane on your grade 747 or DC-10 or whatever plane that you're on, Airbus or whatever, and someone doesn't tell you where to go? And he says, oh, that would suck because we would take off and just fly around until we run out of fuel and then we crash. He says, so, I mean, you got to know where to go. And so that's the way it is in life. You got to know where you're going to go. So if you have a specific goal in mind, then you can go after this goal. For me, it was becoming Mr. Universe, or becoming, one of the top stars in Hollywood. So there's certain things that you had to do. I had to grind it out and go to acting classes at night 3 times a week. I had to go and take accent removal classes. Not that they always worked, but I mean, that's what I did. The
right.
amount of times that I said the sink is made out of zinc, or 3,333 and 1/3, because in Austria or in Germany you say 333 with the S rather than with the TH, because we don't have the TH sound. So you have to practice that. Or the fine wine grows on a vine. The F, the W, and the V. We kind of confuse those things because we don't have those sounds. So, for us, it is I'm drinking a red wine,
right,
rather than wine. So you learn in America the w sound. So, but it's not something that you do 5 minutes a day. This is something that you do hours every day to retrain your mouth and to be able to make sounds. Like Americans, when you say Achtung, they cannot do the sound. They say Achtung. So now they would have to train the CH sound, the sound. So we have to train certain things. We don't have a P or B. There's just vowel instead of Paul. With a P. So you have to train those things, and you have to train to act, and you have to train the English language and learn it and read out loud. Pages after pages after pages every day, read out loud. And so that you can pronounce certain words, and then you work with experts and say, this is how you pronounce it, and this are the English rules, this is how you spell it, this is how the grammar is, unlike the German grammar. So it takes a lot of work. But I mean, it's fun. I had a fun time doing that. For someone else, it's maybe just very tedious, but I mean, for me, it was fun because I knew why I was doing it. I was doing it that I can go on a movie set and act out great scenes without having to worry so much about the language, about the pronunciation, or if someone come, they still did. They come to me and says, Arnold, I would just pronounce this stronger this way. It was not as understandable. And otherwise, we just fix it in the studio later on when we do the looping and all that stuff. But try to do it, say it the right way, pronounce it the right way. So those things happen. But it was all hard work, but it was fun to do all of those things because I knew where I was going.
Right.
And that's with everything like this. And that's why I always recommend to people very highly when someone says, look, I try to make the next level in my success. Well, I said, what is the next level? Where do you want to go? And a lot of times they cannot identify what that next level is. But the only way you can go and do the work is if you have it specifically and see exactly and visualize exactly what it is that you want to accomplish. So, like, for instance, if you say that I want to go and be in better shape, I say, what does that mean? Let's set a goal. Let's say that you want to lose 20 pounds because it seems to me that you have a little bit of big waistline. So I think we can trim that down 20 pounds. And then here's the training program. So now here's a goal. I want to lose 20 pounds. And now you can go on that scale every day and you can shoot for that goal to lose 20 pounds and at the same time build up and get more muscular at the body and get a six-pack and all those kind of things. So if you have a specific goal and you say, I want to look great when I go on the beach. So that's a great goal. It sounds stupid a lot of times. Or when someone says to you, people came to me, young guys, this, I want to impress this girl. I want to, when I rip off my shirt, I want her to freak out when we go the first time to the beach. That sounds totally stupid, right? But not to me, because I said to myself, I'm going to use that. And I'm going to tell him, I said, that's a great goal. So I said, let's work on that. When do you want to go to the beach? When is that day going to happen? He says, well, in June, we usually start going to the beach. I say, okay, so now we have 3 months. We have 3 months to get there, to really impress this girl. So let's go and now start doing sets, like 4 sets in a row, 4 machines in a row. Let's train a little faster. Let's use a little bit more weight. Let's cut down on the calorie intake, carbohydrate. So, and now all of a sudden, there's a specific goal that by June 1st, he wants to be able to take his girlfriend. So whatever reason that you can find that is a motivation for you, use it. It doesn't matter how it is stupid, sounds stupid to someone else. Use it.
Right. And then how much of, whether it's a ritual, a habit, a routine, does come down to what you've been talking about, which is the reps. You talk about people will see you as a movie star, as an action star, but they don't know the countless hours you had to learn how to speak English. They still hear your accent, but they don't realize how far you came. Or they see you as world's greatest bodybuilder. They don't know that you've essentially, from what you told us, been working out since you were a child.
Well, after you have the vision, you realize that you then have to put the work in it. And then it's all about reps, or what they also call mileage. In skiing, we call it mileage, right? I mean, how many miles do you ski every day? Moguls and going up and down and going through the gates, or going fast if you're a downhill racer. How many times you go 60 miles, 80 miles, 90 miles an hour and practice that? So, I mean, it's all about reps. And I think if you have a clear vision, it is easy to do the reps, because you don't worry so much about, oh my God, I have to do so many reps. I still today, I mean, if I think about when I do a speech, I sometimes do the speech before I give the speech somewhere 20 times, 30 times. The whole speech, if it's an hour speech, I do it 30 times. Then you go and you practice it on the teleprompter. Then you practice it just with pages. Then you try to practice it so they can say certain kind of paragraphs without ever looking down and all of those things. So it's all rehearsal and practice and putting, what we say, the reps into it. That's what it is.
Right. When you are feeling drained or when it's difficult, everyone has bad days. And as you said, you kind of have to push through. Are there certain things you do to recharge so you can help reset and get yourself back on track?
Well, to me, the number one thing is to focus again. What is your goal? If you feel drained, which sometimes happens, where we're kind of like exhausted, then of course, like I said earlier, when we are night filming, you sometimes get that it gets to be 2 a.m, and so you get sleepy, especially the first week when you have that turnaround in the schedule. So what I do then is I use chess. I started playing chess when I was after I was 50 years old, because I felt like at 50, I was not able to come back as quickly. Like if someone says at 2 a.m, Arnold, you can rest now for 2 hours, and then we use you again around 4 o'clock. We need you for this great action sequence that we are doing. You have to jump into the car, drive around the corner, and do a slide with the car, and then get out and have a shootout or something like that. Well, I realized that at 50, it was more difficult to come back after 2 hours of sleep. So I said to myself, I will never, ever sleep again at night when I'm filming. I will use this time to play chess. And I'm going to keep myself mentally alert. And so the more chess I played during that time and not went to sleep, the more alert I was, and the more I was able to come to the set fully charged, full of energy, because the mind was racing now from all the chess playing. I had to concentrate. And I came into the set, I remembered my lines always 100%, and I did all the physical work 100%, so there was never a problem. So you just have to figure out, what does it take for you to be on? So when you have a setback, or when you feel like sluggish, or when you feel like, you're mentally tired and that you're exhausted or something like that, just find your goal again, and then just find a way to recharge and to get going again. And sometimes, there's moments like I remember in the 70s when I had so many things going at the same time. I was competing in bodybuilding. I was getting into the movie business. I was also hustling business. I was in real estate, and I was buying apartment buildings and office buildings and building them and dealing with construction and all that stuff. So there was a lot of things coming together where I felt like I was overloaded. And I was very fortunate that I had a friend on the beach that I trusted 100%. I've known this guy for years and years and years, and I always admired him that he was so calm. And I said to him, how do you stay so calm? And this was the first time when he revealed to me that he was a teacher at transcendental meditation. So obviously he was one of those guys that never wanted to force this up on anybody and say, this is what you should do. But because I asked, he said to me, try it. Come up to Westwood, where we have our offices there in our center, and give it a try. He says, it may work for you. Didn't push it at all. And I found that very impressive. And I went up there and I learned my mantra. And he was working with me, and the others were working with me. And then he went back for a follow-up meeting, so you can ask questions. Do you breathe between the mantra, and when you kind of reset your mind and all this stuff. And they answered all the questions. And that son of a gun, I tell you, I learned something new, because I learned how to meditate. And I was like 20 minutes meditating, 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. And all of a sudden, I started focusing on specific things. So when I was doing real estate, I was focused totally on real estate, and I didn't think at the same time about my bodybuilding training. And when I was working out in the gym, I was not thinking about my acting career. I was just thinking about my body and winning Mr. Olympia. So I started getting really focused. I learned through this meditation how to focus. And I did this for like a year. And then I discontinued. And I never yet had to kind of bring it back. But at any given time, I know how to do it. At any given time, if I ever would feel in this kind of a cluster situation again, I would do it. But I think it really helped me so much so that it had lasted now for the last 40-some years, that I could really departmentalize things and really focus just on one thing at a time and not let everything cluster together.
Do you remember what the mantra was that would help you focus when you started?
No,
back
you
in the
never
70s?
repeat it, never tell anyone your mantra.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
Is the biggest secret in Hollywood that you're the ringer of chess games on set?
We play chess games on the set.
Yeah. Or do people know now how good you are, or is
I'm not good. I mean, I'm good for an average guy that plays, but I tell you, there's just so many degrees of when I play with my computer and I set it only on half and it beats me more often than I beat the computer. So, I cannot say to myself I'm a master or anything like that by any means, but I have a great time and it takes care of the job. I've never really taken a lesson. I only remember my moves from the days when I was playing with my father. My father was doing something very smart, and it was also different in those days when I grew up 60 years ago, when I was like 10, 12 years old. We didn't have television. We didn't have phones. We had no phone in the house. We didn't have cell phones or internet or anything like this didn't exist. So therefore, your only way at home of entertainment at night was to play games. So we played, kind of games at home. We were bowling on the floor, and we set up the bowling pins on the floor, and they were bowling on the floor. We were playing kind of board games. We were playing card games, and a lot of times chess games. And so that's where I learned how to play chess. And then it happened to be that Franco Colombo, who was my training partner for many, many years, who just passed away recently, he also was totally in love with chess. I have no idea why. That was just one of those coincidences that when I brought him over from Europe and we lived together for a while, we always went to Muscle Beach here in Santa Monica. And, to hang out and to get a tan and to swing on the rings and do the chin-ups and stuff like that down there. But there were long tables with chess sets on it, and people would play chess on the beach, out in the sun like that. And there were real masters there. And so Frank and I, we sat down and we had this friend, Ari Zeller, who was a bodybuilding photographer who took fantastic photographs in the gym and outside the gym, and did competitions and all this. And he was a very, very good chess player. And he knew a lot of the chess masters down there. So Frank and I, we played down there on the beach, and there were guys going around and walking up and down to 10 chess players and playing with 10 players at the same time. And we even met Bobby Fischer down there. He came down there one time, but of course we did not know who he was until Arizella told us, you know who that is. He's the greatest chess player in America. So that was before he beat Spassky in 1972, if I'm not mistaken. It was when he then won the world championship. That was then after that. But I mean, he was down on Muscle Beach and he was like hustling and he was playing like with 10 guys at the same time, beat them all. And it was like, Frank and I, we were like freaking out of how smart this guy was and how talented he was in all this, but we had no idea who he was.
Right. I hear a lot of things that you've brought from your past. You talk about lessons you learned, even chess, because you grew up in a time where technology wasn't as prevalent as it was today. Are there times in your life where you try to remove that technology in order to maybe have that focus or have the moments that are reminiscent of when, technology didn't dominate everything?
Well, I think that you have to have certain rules. Like we have, when I grew up right here in this house, when we had the children, when we sit down on this table where we are sitting right now, and we had dinner, there was no phone allowed. There was nothing that had anything to do with the technology was allowed on the table. So we always had those rules. And because then you can have normal conversations. I despise that when you sit down on a table now, dinner tables, and the first thing that people do is they start looking at their machines. I call them machines, but I mean they're cell phones and iPads and computers or whatever it is. And but it's very funny that their heads is down and there is a lack of communication on the table then. But you want to get together with people and have a chat rather than just answering your cell phone and communicating that way long distance. And I think that this has an effect on communication and on the togetherness of a family. Our family, my family, was always really together and connected, where my wife and I, we always knew everything about the kids because they communicated. We communicated with them and we just said, okay, what do you have to say, Christopher? Patrick, what did you do today? Christina, what was your biggest challenge today? And they had them talk and express themselves. So I think this is very important. I also, for instance, never take into my bedroom, for instance, any device whatsoever, no cell phone, no iPad or anything like that, because it is just destructive. It's just that you get phone calls at 11 o'clock, then you can't sleep after that because there was maybe a disturbing phone call or some bad communication of some sort. So it's like, it's all bad. And I think we just have to make an effort and to have certain rules. And a lot of the families, sadly, like that idea of having the kids have their cell phones because then they don't have to make the effort to communicate with the kids. They think this is an easy way to parent. They give them right away things, iPads so they can play games on it and stuff to just shut them up. But it's not good on the end. You got to communicate and you got to play with the kids because then that family is much more together. Then you don't have the situation when the parents get old, that the kids don't want to have anything to do with it. They put them in an old folks home because that's the way you treated them. So that's how they treat you back. And so I'm very much against that. I'm for, where people communicate more and then again set certain rules that are kind of without having to think about it, where I say, okay, when we have dinner, we don't have anything on the table. Let's not have any phones out. So I'm a big believer in that.
Right. Last question. Are there any other surprising rituals, habits, routines that people might be surprised to know about you?
I would say, people probably are surprised that I have a side of me that likes to paint. And I think that it's not an abnormalness. If you think about, I'm from Austria, where we had arts classes twice a week, where we did one day painting and one day drawing and then geometric drawings and all this kind of stuff. So there was a lot of weight put on that over there. So then when I came over, my mother made me do a few drawings for her, pen and ink. So I did some of those for her because she loved it. So for Mother's Day or something like that, I would do that. Or I would paint plates that somewhere here in the background. Oh, yeah. For instance, this right here, this is just to give you an example. This I painted for, it says Mother's Day, 1995, Happy Mother's Day. So I painted that for Aurelia, for my mother. It said in the back. So I painted that. So what happens is I found out that it's easy to go to a store and to buy a gift. And they do that anyway. Or it's easy to go to a flower shop and to get some flowers. Unlike the old days when I was a kid and my mother had Mother's Day, and we had Mother's Day, my brother and I were sent out by my father, and right away it became a competition of who picks the most beautiful flowers. So you go out in the grass, and the grass is this tall, and then you pick flowers. And you come home with a big bouquet of flowers that you put then in a vase, and you put a note on it and say, Happy Mother's Day. And my mother was in heaven, that we made an effort to go out and to do that. So now in the days it's different. You go to the flower shop and you get the flowers and it takes no effort, just a little bit of money. So you try to, at the same time, make an effort. So you get them the flowers, you get a gift or whatever it is. But now when you sit in a store and color me mine, like for instance this is, where you find some pottery and then you paint on that, they know that you spent hours there painting. Then you had to go back and get the glaze put over it and get it baked and everything like that. And then you go and have to proof it. And then you say, you want a little darker, this or that, and all this kind of stuff. So it takes effort. And people really like that. I think especially women like that, if you make an effort. So I got into this whole habit that when my daughters were born, I did the same thing for them. I started painting birthday cards. Then for my wife, I painted Valentine's, paintings, heart-shaped things, or flowers or whatever it is. And so I got into these paintings, and now I do, for the kids, I do Christmas cards I paint, and for Mother's Day I paint, and for Valentine's Day I paint. And there's different things. So people don't know that maybe about me, but that's something that I like to do. This is kind of a hobby. And also how much time I like to spend with animals. I have a donkey here at the house. I have a pony, a miniature pony here at the house. We have 2 dogs here at the house. One sadly passed away. Gustav, who was named after my father, passed away just recently last December. But in any case, I love spending time with animals because it's really fantastic. Animals make you feel like so relaxed when you play with animals, when you teach animals how to do certain things and stuff like that. So there's things like that maybe people don't know about me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arnold.
Absolutely.